In this video, I'm going to beat Pokemon Platinum with only the Infernape-line. Playthrough rules are in the description, and note this is the second episode of my Pokemon Platinum series, so if you haven't seen Torterra already, check that one out first. Of course, there are going to be spoilers, you have been warned, now let's do this. With Torterra, I was able to get a time of 3 hours, 38 minutes, and 47 seconds. I had 40 resets, and I finished the game at level 84, with a game time of 8 hours and 57 minutes. Today, the Fire-type starter is going to be trying to beat this result, and I think it's going to because speedrunners choose this one whenever they play Platinum. As I mentioned in my last video, I referenced Worcester's Pokemon Platinum Any% speedrun, which has a time of 2 hours, 38 minutes, and 47 seconds when I was figuring out my route for these games. Of course, it's worth noting that I play the game on a multiple of game speeds, so I am nowhere near speedrunning time. However, I wanted to address the speed that the game runs at because it isn't exactly 4 times game speed like it is in all of the games prior to Generation 4. The emulator software that I am using right now is called BizHawk, and it does not have a dynamic recompiler, which allows the game to run at faster speeds. As a result, sometimes I am going to get capped frame rates in certain areas, especially when the game is rendering a lot of 3D objects. I noticed this most prominently in the footage when I am running around a large overworld location, and then I go through a small guardhouse. This transitional area, which is much smaller, the player character actually runs faster, and then when they go back into the overworld, the running speed slows down. You might ask why not use an emulator that has a recompiler? Well, number one, you don't get fully accurate deterministic RNG, which bothers me on some level, but more practically, the only emulator that GameHook can currently access is BizHawk, and I figured I would start this video talking about game speed because the Generation 4 games in general are just known for running so slow. This engine feels like frozen molasses. Even with the game sped up, things really drag. And hopefully that is not going to be the case for Infernape. Of course, in these videos, I'm going to be evolving as I go, so I'm starting out with a Chimchar. For base stats, it has 44 HP, 58 attack, 44 defense, 58 special attack, 44 special defense, and 61 speed. Of course, like all starter Pokemon, it has a medium slow growth rate, and it begins the game as a mono fire type. When it evolves at level 14, it will gain its additional fighting typing. Its ability is Blaze, which powers up fire-type moves when it's under 33% health, but this ability is really not going to be that relevant today because of the moves that Infernape learns. It gets more than what Chimchar has available to it, so I'll go through them a little bit later into this video. That being said, I want to draw attention to one specific move, which is Swords Dance. My entire game plan is going to revolve around this move. Doing this Pokemon Platinum series has taught me a new way to plan my runs. I essentially look at the Pokemon I'm using's moveset, and I try to select 1 or 2 moves that I think are going to be the best moves overall, and then I can build my strategy around them. In this case, it seemed immediately obvious that Swords Dance, the setup move, is going to be fantastic. Plus, this move is even better in Generation 4 with the physical special split, because I can run physical fire moves in combination with coverage. Alright, so let's get into this playthrough with footage just east of Jubilife City where I take on the rival. Barry's team consists of 2 Pokemon. They really shouldn't be a problem. I am over-leveled by this point. The Piplup doesn't know any water-type moves. I take some time lowering its defense with Leer because it's lowering my attack with Growl. Kind of annoying. Eventually though, I just start using Scratch. It's doing enough damage, plus my Chimchar crits, knocking it out in only 3 attacking turns. In the first 2 generations, the starters evolved at different levels. In these cases, typically the Grass-type starter would evolve at lower levels when compared with the other 2. In Generation 1, Bulbasaur reaches its final form as Venusaur at level 32, where both the other 2 starters require level 36. This asymmetrical approach was dropped in Generation 3, but it returns in Generation 4. As we saw yesterday with Turtwig, it evolves into Grotle at level 18, which is a higher level than all the other starters, but then it reaches its final form Torterra at the lowest level 32. The Fire-type starter takes the opposite approach, leveling up to its 2nd stage at the earliest level, and then to Infernape at level 36. This means my Chimchar quickly evolves into a Monferno and gains its fighting typing. I personally really like this game design because then the fire type is less disadvantaged against the rock type gym leader who is first. This evolution brings with it a fighting type move in the form of Mach Punch, which has base 40 power and 100% accuracy, and it also has raised priority, so it's going to move first. As I head towards the mine, I want to draw your attention to one hidden item. It is this heart scale. In my most recent Platinum playthroughs, which will air on the channel later this week, I have stopped picking up this item, but I wanted to bring it to your attention just in case you're playing a Pokemon that needs a lot of heart scales, or you're doing a casual playthrough and you want to grab this. Following the mine, I head into the gym, fighting both of the trainers. I think in most runs, I am going to fight these people just for levels early on. While there are a lot of rare candies in this game, they don't come until later on, so for most Pokemon, training will be required. Monferno reaches level 15, and now I'm ready to take on Rourke. First up is Geodude. I went for Ember because I figured I was going to 2-hit, and if I burn, I will cut its attack. That being said, it just goes for Stealth Rocks, and I knock it out with Mach Punch. Next is Onix. I go for Mach Punch, dealing just under half, and it lowers my defense with Screech, which makes this Onix actually useful because lowering the opponent's defense before the Cranidos comes in and hits with its 40 attack is a fantastic strategy. I take a little bit of damage from Rock Throw, finish the Onix off, level up to 16, and here I have a chance to learn Fury Swipes, but this move is awful, so I'm not going to. Last is Cranidos. I go for Ember, hoping for the burn, don't get it, it uses Headbutt, and Monferno survives with 10 hit points. Okay, so my next attack has to knock it out. I go for Mach Punch, and it has enough damage. With that, I earn myself the first badge, and with it comes an expanded Mart selection, which I'll take advantage of right away. I think selling the TM for Stealth Rock always makes sense. I can't really see a use for this move in a solo challenge. I guess you could forcibly switch the opponent's Pokemon out with a move like Roar, but why would you want to do that? It's just better to attack. On my way back through Orbur Gate, which is a little cave area, I am going to catch myself a Psyduck. While I do that, I want to go through the HM users that I'm going to be catching in Pokemon Platinum. First of all, of course, I'm going to be getting a Bidoof and a Starly, and finally I want to catch a Geodude and a Psyduck. Bidoof needs to evolve into a Bibarel. I think it's Bibarel. I looked up the Pokedex entry pronunciation for it, so I'm going to go with that for now until you yell at me in the comments about it. Anyways, it needs to be in its final form to become a very competent HM user, and because I don't want to train and evolve my Bidoof, I have to catch other options. With these 4 Pokemon, I'm going to have access to all 8 HMs. Yes, there really are that many in these games. On my way north to Floroma Town, I'm going to grab the TM for Rock Tomb and teach it to Monferno in the place of Taunt. Quick reminder, this move is much better in Generation 4 when compared with Generation 3. Yesterday with the Grass Starter, I didn't have any problems against Commander Mars, so I expect that Monferno is going to do even better because it has a fighting type move against her Purugly. Her lead is Zubat. Now I've taught Rock Tomb specifically so I can hit this thing for super effective damage. I am under a damage rounding threshold though, and as a result the Zubat survives. It uses Toxic, badly poisoning my Pokemon, so now I am on a timer, and it is ticking quickly, because Purugly can use Fake Out, taking one of my turns away. Despite the fact that I have an Oran Berry and it can heal a little bit of health, it's not enough, and Monferno goes down. I was not expecting this to be my first reset. That being said, it's going to be easier in the next fight. I equip a Pecha Berry so Toxic can't get me, plus Rock Tomb rolls better damage and the Zubat goes down to a single hit. Next is Purugly. Fake Out does some damage, but Mach Punch is doing much more than half, so I finish it in only 2 hits. On my way north towards the forest, I am going to do some training. This is specifically because Fantina has Psybeam on her Mismagius. I am going to need to have enough damage to knock that thing out in 2 hits. So this is a little bit of early investment towards that goal. I also want to use this moment to draw attention to the move Flame Wheel, which was introduced in Generation 2, and from there into Generation 3 it dealt special damage, but starting in Generation 4, this move is physical. That's a little bit of a downgrade for Typhlosion, unfortunately, but in this case it will be a useful move for me because I can theoretically pair it with Swords Dance. There aren't a lot of other physical fire type moves, and the only other one I'm going to get access to today is Flare Blitz, which does have 120 base power, but it deals 1/3 of the damage inflicted to the target in recoil to the user. I definitely have a bias against using recoil moves with Pokemon. That does hurt me a little bit in Generation 1, where I often don't pick Double Edge when it's the right choice. That being said, when you're using Swords Dance and you're using your HP to buy time, then having to inflict damage with a recoil move makes things less predictable, especially especially in a first playthrough. So today I am not going to be using Flare Blitz, instead prioritizing other moves that I deem more consistent. Okay, so we've reached the next gym. In here I want to draw your attention to one frustrating mechanic in Generation 4. You can't reorder your moves during battle. Instead, you have to open up your Pokemon party, the summary of the Pokemon, and then switch the moves positions, which consumes time, so I'm not going to be doing it that much throughout my runs. I crush all the trainers in the gym, and I expect that that is going to continue against Gardenia. Her lead is Turtwig, I go for Flame Wheel against it and one-shot. Next is Cherim, Flame Wheel takes it to red health. It sets up Safeguard, which is not really good. She uses a Super Potion, but it isn't enough to save it. Last is Roserade. For a second gym leader, this is a fantastic ace Pokemon. Tomorrow with Empoleon, I expect that she's gonna cause some serious problems. But today with Flame Wheel, I just one-shot and earn myself the second badge. I'm going to do some errands now. Some of these I have to do, others are going to be optional. First, I grab the Explorer Kit. Then I talk to Barry. Also, notably, there is a Draco Plate over here. Speedrunner let me know about that one. It's not useful today, but it will be before the end of the week. After that, the dialogue continues. Cynthia gives me the TM for cut, and then I can cut a tree and head into the Team Galactic building. There's only one mandatory fight here against Commander Jupiter. I expect that this one is going to be easy. I'm a higher level now, so I one-shot the Zubat with Rock Tomb. Skuntank is taking decent damage as well from Flame Wheel. It heals itself, causes poison, but it's not enough for her to win. Since I have access to cut outside of battle, I can go back to the old chateau and pick up the rare candy here. This location also has more useful items, but I'm not going to talk about them today because when I was playing this run, I didn't know that they were there. Next, I went south of the city, and I'm really proud that I dodged all the trainers on Cycling Road. Then, in order to enter the cave and grab the TM for Earthquake, which Infernape can learn, I cut this tree and went into the grass, ran into a Geodude. I figured I could just knock it out for experience, but it goes for Self-Destruct and Monferno faints, which puts me in a really awkward position because I didn't save after defeating Jupiter. Because I have HM users, I don't black out here, but I felt it wasn't really fair to continue with the run after this loss, so I find a trainer, black out, heading back to Eterna City, and then I continue with my run. Starting in 2024, which is just around the corner, I'm going to be keeping track of blackouts as well, so in the future this will be counted in a different metric, but today I'm going to count it as a reset. I explore the cave, grabbing myself a rare candy, and then the TM for Earthquake. I use an escape rope to leave, grab the next rare candy, and then after briefly talking with Cyrus, I head into Hearthome City. Of course here, the standard play is going to be to grab the Shell Bell, talk to Fantina in the contest hall, and now I'm ready for my third gym battle. Of all of the ones that I have had so far, this one is definitely going to be the most difficult. Her first Pokemon is Duskull, and luckily Will-O-Wisp will not burn a Fire-type Pokemon, so I don't have to worry about that today. Also, Pursuit is doing so little damage, so I just two-shot her lead and move on to the Haunter. Flame Wheel does more than half, causing a burn, and Shadow Claw does chip damage, so while she does heal this Pokemon, it doesn't matter. But the reason I'm worried about this fight is next, it's Mismagius. I only have 60 speed, meaning it has 2 more. It goes first using Confuse Ray. Okay, so it's not prioritizing Psybeam. That is actually good for me. However, Monferno hits itself, and then it uses Psybeam, which does massive damage. My berry restores a little bit of health. Flame Wheel does more than half, but the Citrus Berry looks like it takes the Misdreavus out of KO range. Instead of using another Psybeam, it goes for Shadow Ball, which does enough damage, and Monferno faints. I tried the fight again, but this time things go much worse for me because the Haunter puts me to sleep using Hypnosis. I'll draw your attention to one small glitch with my overlay. It does not show that my held item has been consumed after my Pokemon uses it. This will be fixed sometime after this week because I didn't notice it until I went back to edit all of this footage. Of course, this second fight is a loss because I took too much damage earlier on. I tried a third time and I think this is theoretically the wrong choice. That being said, I crit the Haunter, and so I have full health when the Mismagius comes out. It uses Confuse Ray, which fails to stop me from attacking. My Flame Wheel does less than half, and then it crits with Psybeam, but Monferno survives on 1 hit point. Okay, so I'm probably going to knock myself out. No, I am not. Flame Wheel hits, getting a critical hit, and I defeat Fantina. Alright, I definitely should have been here for a longer period of time, but I'll take the luck and move on with this run. Outside of the city, I have to face Barry. This fight wasn't an issue yesterday because I could set up with Curse and then do a lot of damage to his Pokemon, but in this case I have no setup, plus Rock Tomb isn't doing very much to the Staravia. Also, it does no Endeavor, so I was worried it was going to take me down to low health and then use Quick Attack to finish me off, but it doesn't, luckily. That being said, the Prinplup that follows is really terrifying. Notably, Bubble Beam does not have the correct icon. I'm not able to do much damage to it, and it finishes me with one water type move. I tried the fight again, hoping for better luck at the beginning, but I just don't get it. Plus my attack is being lowered by the Staravia's Intimidate, so this is not going to be possible at this level. Fantina might not have been a problem, but apparently Barry is. I'm going to go back to the previous route of the game where I skipped trainers and fight these now to level Monferno up as much as is possible. To this point in the run I have gained 3 rare candies. I made a mistake with one, using it a little bit too early. I had to train after that and then use 2 more rare candies to bring my starter up to level 36 so that it evolves into an Infernape. This evolution gives me access to the move Close Combat, which has base 120 power. I'm also going to teach Infernape Earthquake now, and I put this in the place of Flame Wheel. Overall, I think having Earthquake, Rock Tomb, Close Combat, and Return is a better set right now than having a Fire move. Making this kind of choice in Pokemon Platinum is very easy because once I reach Pastoria City, I will have 3 heart scales and I can use the move reminder to get it back if I need it. Let's go through Infernape's base stats to figure out just how good this thing is. It is a fast, balanced attacker, so it has 76 HP, 104 attack and special attack, 71 defense and special defense, and 108 speed. While my Pokemon's nature is hardy, not boosting or decreasing any stats, you'll notice some slight discrepancies, like the fact that my special attack is 3 points higher than my physical attack right now. That's just because my Pokemon is gaining effort values, fighting trainers, and I can't really control which ones it gets because stopping the run and wasting time grinding against wild Pokemon is just always going to be a time loss. Okay, so with these major upgrades, now let's see if I have enough to defeat Barry. Staravia is first with -1 attack. I'm just barely not able to knock it out with Rock Tomb. Return finishes it, and then the Prinplup comes in. It isn't a steel type yet, so close combat isn't super effective, but with the same type attack bonus, it would be doing the most damage. That being said, I took the more conservative approach using Earthquake so that I can knock it out with 2 turns, keeping my defense and special defense. Once it's down, the fight gets a lot easier. Earthquake 1 hits the Ponyta, as well as the Roselia. And now let's talk about Infernape's total move pool, because this thing gets access to some really good moves. The only level up move that I haven't mentioned to this point is Calm Mind, which comes at level 53. It boosts special attack and special defense, but I think that Swords Dance is going to be the superior setup move. Through TM and HM, it gets access to a lot of coverage: Solar Beam, Iron Tail, Earthquake, Return, Dig, Brick Break, Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Rock Tomb, Aerial Ace, Overheat, Shadow Claw, Stone Edge, of course Swords Dance, Rock Slide, Poison Jab, Grass Knot, and U-Turn. Honestly, what can't this thing do? It's really good. And I should mention at some point during this video the complete lack of fire types in Sinnoh. Maybe that is thematic because it's supposed to be a cold and snowy area, but for team building purposes, it's always really frustrating. You're stuck choosing between Infernape and Rapidash. In days prior, I did not like either of those Pokemon, so I always had to build my team around the fact that I was just not going to have a fire type. In Solaceon Town, I want to draw your attention to one item. It's kind of annoying to pick up. You have to jump over these 2 ledges and then grab the PP up. If you want to go through the ruins, you then have to loop around the entire area and jump over a different ledge. That's why it takes a while to pick up. I obtained this item today so I can raise the PP of Earthquake, but there are better PP up options later on in the game which I could have used instead. I'll talk about those later in this series. Of course, I pick up the Defog TM and then I head north, grabbing myself a rare candy in the grass before proceeding to Route 215 where there is rain. As I go through this area and skip this little cut tree and just proceed on my merry way, I do want you to know that behind that tree is the Fist Plate, which would boost the power of close combat by 20%. I really should have picked it up right now, but don't worry, I'm not going to forget it entirely. I will come back for it later. In Veilstone City, I'm first going to go to the gym to face Maylene, and then after that, I'm hoping that I'm going to have enough money to buy Swords Dance. Her lead is Meditite. Oh, I didn't heal. Okay, so that's a little bit unfortunate. She does chip damage with Fake Out and then Earthquake 1 hits. Next is Lucario. The ground type move continues being useful because it is super effective, so I knock her ace out with 1 hit. Last is Machoke. Earthquake does more than half, its strength does very little, and so that battle was really simple. I didn't need to heal. I go to the department store and I sell a bunch of items, but I only have $31,000 after this. I would need $40,000 in order to buy Swords Dance, so I'm gonna have to progress with my playthrough and come back for it later. Unlike yesterday, I don't forget to face the Galactic Grunts and get the HM for Fly before heading towards Pastoria City. Upon arriving in my destination, I pass right through the city over to this marshy area and pick up a rare candy. I think I'm always gonna do things in this order. I can just teach Fly and head back to the city right after that. The next major battle is against Barry outside the gym. This one is so much easier than the previous one, so no resets here. Inside Wake's gym, I had to debate something. Do I want to use some of my rare candies now to try to make this fight a little bit easier? After all, Torterra did struggle during it, and I assume that Infernape is going to be even worse. I decided against it, gave my Infernape a citrus berry, and so let's see how this goes at level 45. Wake's first Pokemon is Gyarados. This is a fantastic lead because he gets Intimidate right away. I'm relying on Rock Tomb here, and it misses right away. Gyarados uses Waterfall, doing more than half. My Citrus Berry restores some health, and then Rock Tomb does less than half. Okay, so as expected, this fight is difficult. I tried again to see what would happen if I don't miss, and the result is not good. I take the Gyarados down to red health, he heals it, and then of course it's going to get one more attack. Fighting Wake right away was of course not the correct choice. I'm going to go back to the marshy area and fight a bunch of trainers over here to level up as much as is possible. Plus, doing all of these battles and getting to this sort of like regal chateau-like area means that I can fight 2 trainers which give fantastic amounts of money. With that, I have enough to buy the coins required to get the TM for Swords Dance. I teach it in the place of Return. We can all rejoice. The generic move is not going to see a lot of use. The question is, will Swords Dance be enough to defeat Wake? Well, here's how it went. Turn 1, I use Swords Dance. Gyarados does more than half with Waterfall. Okay, I guess it just got a good roll, and then my Rock Tomb fails to one-hit. I thought the damage rounding threshold was going to make this possible, but after a healing item, it once again fails to one-hit. I do move on to the Quagsire. Close Combat is able to one-shot, but then Floatzel comes out, and it moves first because Aqua Jet is a priority move. It gets a critical hit, and Infernape faints. Granted, it probably wouldn't have survived anyways because its defensive stats were lowered. I have 2 more losses. We're watching the second one right now. The Gyarados just crits with Waterfall. Yeah, kind of annoying. The thing is, at this level, after just one Swords Dance, I do have a chance to knock the Gyarados out with Rock Tomb. So in this case, when I use it, it goes down to 1 hit, and I have green health left for the rest of the battle. Close Combat, 1 hits the Quagsire. I move on to the Floatzel. Because I have higher health, I think it prioritizes a different move, likely Brine instead of Aqua Jet. Therefore, I move first with Close Combat and knock it out in 1 turn. Crasher Wake so far in this series is definitely the strongest trainer that I have to face. After chasing a Team Galactic Grunt around, I go back to the marsh, grabbing the rare candy that's in here. Remember, you have to be unstuck in order to pick it up. And then I fly to Solaceon Town to start my journey towards Celestic Town. As I go north past the Psyducks, note here that I have corrected my overworld pathing so that I no longer run into optional trainers. Zack and Jen were scary yesterday, so I try to take my time, but I mess it up and they catch me as a result. This is bad because they have a Gyarados. I set up Swords Dance to counter out the Intimidate. Aqua Tail does so much damage. I survive with red health, luckily healing some with a Citrus Berry. The Raichu targets the Bidoof, which is really convenient for me. Rock Tomb hits, and luckily Gyarados goes down. As a result, I am able to win, but I really need to be much more careful here in the future. If you're wondering why I don't just feint all my HM users, the reason is that it takes time, and that takes away from a Pokemon's performance. I don't really think that that is a fair way to play. My HM users are all so weak, they don't really contribute to the battle, other than taking a stray hit here and there. In the future though, I will just intentionally skip this battle every time with better play. In Celestic Town, I face Cyrus, and with a Rock-type move, I have super effective damage against all of his Pokemon. The Golbat does survive, which is annoying, I guess, but it doesn't really matter because his team here is quite easy. It was at this point that I realized I had missed the Fist Plate, so I go back to Route 215, defeat Black Belt Gregory, who is required if you want to obtain this item, and then I give it to Infernape, boosting the effective power of Close Combat from 180 to 216. On the way to Canalave City, I pick up the rare candy, and then I go toe-to-toe with the rival. This is the first team of 5 in the game, and all of his Pokemon are fully evolved. He starts with Staraptor, which intimidates me, but I'm going to set up with Swords Dance to cancel it out. It uses Double Team, which is still not being calculated properly on my overlay. Eventually Rock Tomb hits, and I knock his lead out. Empoleon is next. I go for Earthquake because it's super effective, and I get the one-shot. For the Heracross, I don't really have good damage. Close combat is my best choice. I go for it because I think I'm going to one-hit his following 2 Pokemon. And I was right, both the Rapidash and the Roserade don't stand a chance. Byron is next, and I expect this battle to be very simple. Magneton is his lead, and without setup, I'm just gonna knock it out with Earthquake. Steelix is next. I can use close combat against this thing for ridiculous effective power, 432. Despite its incredible defense stats, it goes down in a single hit. The reason I felt it was safe to do that is because the Bastiodon has terrible attack. I don't know if anyone else has ever realized this, but it actually has less physical attack when compared with Magneton. Yeah, the Magneton. Initially I was going to make the comparison with the Steelix, but of the 3 Pokemon, the Steelix actually hits the hardest with physical moves. Also, the Bastiodon is a Rock Steel type, so it takes 4 times damage from close combat, an effective power of 864, and of course I one-hit it. There are some plot battles next, and they're both very easy for Infernape. That clears the way for me to journey all the way to Snow Point City. While I do this, I'm going to grab a rare candy, then the soft sand, a second rare candy, and then heal myself in this cute little wintry house. By the way, this area really reminds me of where I live. I'm quite close to the Rocky Mountains, and it gets very cold here in winter. Being all bundled up and seeing a bunch of skiers and snow and blizzards feels like home. Come on, Game Freak, please make a region based on Canada. We need a fighting flying Canadian goose Pokemon. And also like an ice normal or ice ground moose Pokemon. I think that would be really cool. Of course, there's a rare candy during this blizzardy section. Then in Snow Point City, there's one more, and with that, I am ready to face Candace. I set up on turn 1 using Swords Dance, and I take some damage from the Sneasel's Aerial Ace, but after that, I move first against all of her Pokemon, and close combat can do ridiculous damage. It feels like this is how Infernape was made to play. You set up with Swords Dance, taking some damage, it's just strong enough to survive some hits, and then once you start sweeping, you don't care if you lose defensive stats, because you know you're going to make it through all the remaining Pokemon. With Candace finished off, I'm going to go to the Team Galactic building in Veilstone City. In Generation 1 and 2, the enemy team areas take a lot of time out of the playthrough. Sylph is quite challenging, especially because of the rival, and in Gen 2 none of it is challenging, but it takes forever. In Pokemon Emerald, they decided that you needed to go through 2 team hideouts, but on repeated attempts it's really kind of just a chore. While Platinum's engine might chug along and there's so much dialogue, at least this section of the game is actually quite short. There are very few mandatory battles here, which is really refreshing. At the end of all of it, I have to face Cyrus. His team is still not very good here, but he does have 2 flying types. That said, with Swords Dance and the ability to move first, Infernape doesn't have problems. On the long journey up to the top of Mount Coronet, I'm going to grab the TM for Rock Slide and teach this in the place of Rock Tomb. Beyond that, I collect rare candies, and then I journey into the Distortion world. The culmination of this area is the battle against Cyrus, and yesterday it was quite challenging. I expect Infernape will do much better. I have super effective damage against every single one of these Pokemon. I could just use Rock Slide, but I could also use Earthquake. Also, the Houndoom can't burn me, but the Gyarados can intimidate. As a result, I take 2 turns against it, and then I take 2 turns against the Crobat, and then I'm going to take 2 turns against the Honchkrow. Okay, so the right choice was to set up with Swords Dance once and then sweep through his entire team. Because Giratina is basically a Pokemon out of a horror movie, I run away from it, and now I'm going to collect a few items before heading towards Sunyshore City. Oh, this guy still wants to stop me from proceeding? That's really frustrating. By the way, you have to fly back to Sandgem Town to talk to the professor before you can go to Sunyshore City. Like, why? This game makes you backtrack so much already. I don't understand why they force you to go back and do this one conversation. In a modern Pokemon game, they definitely would have had the professor just pop up over here and talk to you, but in this case, that level of convenience has not yet been invented. I check on Volkner, ensuring that he's not depressed in the lighthouse, and then I go to completely crush his dreams by battling him in the gym. For electric types, my Pokemon has Earthquake, None of them have levitate. I'm pretty sure you know what happens in this battle. Yes, it's a series of 4 one-hits, and I didn't even use Swords Dance. Right before Victory Road, I pick up a rare candy, and now I want to take inventory of these because I have a total of 14, and I used 3 earlier on into this playthrough. So I have picked up 17 so far in this run. Can you imagine how Generation 1 and 2 would play if you could pick up 17 rare candies? I think the reason the developers put this many in the game is because it's already such a grind if you are raising a team. I think the developers were kind of trying to solve the problems that they had created back in the Johto games. It didn't feel like you could gain that much experience with your team, so they just leveled down all the enemy Pokemon. Then in Generation 3, they leveled the enemy Pokemon up again and tried to balance things a little bit better with less rare candies. Overall, I think they did a good job in Gen 3. Then in Gen 4, they realized that you actually need more levels, so they added a bunch of rare candies. In Gen 5, they completely reworked the experience system, so the amount of experience obtained is based on the Pokemon's level. And then in Generation 6, they just decided, we're not going to try and solve this problem in some kind of interesting way. Instead, we'll just give you an item, the EXP share, and it's going to give all your Pokemon ridiculous amounts of EXP so you never have to train. All of these different attempts at solving the same problem impact solo runs in vastly different ways. What I'm learning in these first 2 Platinum runs is because there are so many available rare candies, I don't really need to do much optional training after about the 3rd gym. Also, it makes more sense to use like 3 to 5 rare candies to beat a difficult trainer rather than reattempting the fight multiple times or grinding like 3 or 4 levels for a damage rounding threshold. With a medium slow growth rate Pokemon like Infernape, I don't even need to be worried about arriving at the late game under leveled, because by the end of Victory Road, if I use all my rare candies, I will be level 83. Interestingly enough, I run into problems during the cave because I don't have any healing items. I have just neglected buying these. I tried to defeat one more trainer in hopes that I could do it, but I have a reset, so I decided to just burn all my rare candies now because I'm sure by this point in the game, the league is going to be quite easy. Before it, I have to completely stomp the rival. Notably here, I did not use Swords Dance and I got intimidated on turn 1. Even with the disadvantage, I'm able to one-shot all of his Pokemon with the exception of Heracross. It survives doing damage with close combat. However, it's less than half, and that's when my defense was at -2. Okay, so let's watch the fire type now completely destroy the league. Aaron is first. I figured that I did not need setup here. Rock Slide is going to one-hit 2 of his Pokemon, and I should be able to finish the Drapion off with Earthquake. Well, that is if I don't select Rock Slide. It goes down on the next turn. Heracross takes 2 hits. Vespiquen is an easy 1-hit, and Close Combat polishes off the Scissor. Bertha's next. She leads with a Whiscash. By the way, I really like this Whiscash sprite. It makes it look slightly more imposing than it was in Generation 3, and believe me, this thing is supposed to be imposing. I take my time against it setting up with Earthquake, and then I knock it out, getting a critical hit. Gliscor is next. I go for Rock Slide, but it just barely survives and uses Earthquake for super effective damage. And after Sandstorm takes its toll, Infernape has red health. Bertha heals the Gliscor, it once again survives. This isn't just wasting time, I'm also taking damage from the weather. Luckily, the following Hippowdon goes down to a single hit, but it had Sandstream, so I take more weather damage. Golem can be one-shot using Earthquake, but will he survive the Sandstorm damage? And the answer is yes, on 3 hit points. I knock the Rhyperior out with Earthquake, and because you don't take Sandstorm damage when you win the fight, I have made it past Bertha. But that was really close. Flint is next, and this is where my level 84 Pokemon is going to have its first reset during the league. Not because it can't beat his team, but because I forgot to purchase full restores. Honestly, that's quite frustrating, so I have to black out here because I've saved during the league. I want to mention why I didn't buy the full restores. It's specifically because Barry ambushes you when you step on a certain tile in this area. I figured right after I beat him I needed to heal, and then I completely forgot about buying items. So I have to face Bertha again, but I figured things out here. While her first Pokemon Whiscash takes me to orange health, I'm going to knock it out using Close Combat. Then against the Gliscor, if you examine my effective powers, Close Combat does more damage. As a result, I can knock it out in 1 hit and take no damage. From there, Earthquake can one-hit the Hippowdon, the Golem, as well as the Rhyperior. And it can just keep one-hitting all the way through Flint's team. Although, I do want to acknowledge the fact that Magmortar has one of the coolest intro animations when it gets sent out into battle. This level of unique personality is something we just don't see in new Pokemon games these days. The last member of the league is Lucian. Theoretically, he should be a problem because of his typing, but rare candies say no to that. With him defeated, let's move on to Cynthia. Her first Pokemon is Spiritomb, and it has super effective damage in the form of Psychic. That said, it doesn't have an amazing special attack, so I set up against it twice, then I fumbled using close combat against it, being taken down to low orange health. Earthquake hits on the next turn, knocking her lead out, and then she sends in Milotic. I continue using Earthquake, and the defensive Pokemon goes down to a single hit. Togekiss is next. Of course, Rock Slide is the go-to here. It doesn't miss, knocking the flying type out, and Cynthia sends in her ace, Garchomp. For maximum damage, I go for close combat, and it is enough. Beyond that, she only has Roserade and Lucario left, both of which should take massive damage from Earthquake. However, the Lucario has extreme speed, so it moves first, but Infernape hangs on with 4 hit points, and Earthquake finishes the run. Infernape clocks in with a final real time of 3 hours, 6 minutes, and 34 seconds, with 14 resets at level 87. This is a game time of 8 hours and 15 minutes. Put side by side with the grass type starter, the fire type was so much better. It outperformed in every single metric. It finished with lower real time, resets, and game time, and it also beat the game at a higher level. This playthrough felt very smooth in comparison with my first one. With Torterra, Candace completely walled it for a while, and there was no equivalent to that using Infernape. Of course, I am still just getting started in Pokemon Platinum. Tomorrow I'll be using Empoleon, and the following day Luxray. I hope you're enjoying these videos, and I hope they are a better introduction to a new game than I have done in the past. It has tended to be the case that I start off very sloppy with very little game knowledge, but I've tried to remedy that for this series. Of course, some learning has to happen while making the videos and doing the runs. I can't completely prepare theoretically. I expect that all of you will also have fantastic commentary to help me learn these games quicker. So thank you so much for being a part of this community. It really means the world to me. And I normally use that line for my supporters, so I don't really know what to say now other than thank you if you support me directly. Yeah, it really does help out. If you've made it this far, you're incredible. Daily December continues tomorrow with more Pokemon Platinum.